Gotta restock that fridge. So a lot of the stuff surrounding my channel has to do with the studio, recording in general. One of the questions that gets tossed around a lot is, well, what do you do when you're at home? Well, I wanted to put this kind of to the test. I teamed up with another YouTuber, just happens to be a friend from college.
Hi, I'm Jonathan from the YouTube channel Better Drummer.
Really solid drummer. Can you get good recordings at home? Now, if you've watched my channel for any amount of time, you know I try to stay pretty agnostic. Studio, home studio, the space doesn't really matter. It's what you do with it. So in this test, I wrote a song, I sent him the song, and we wanted to see if he could record something in his home with his gear that I could then mix and make it sound good. So if you're into checking that out, stick around. And yeah, that was like 30 cans of Coke Zero. Not sponsored. But feel free to call if you're interested. Just saying. I decided to make a track with rough ideas on drums, send it to John, and just see what he did. I tried to treat this just like producing somebody who would mix at home. We talk about mic choice, we talk about something, but I don't have control of that environment. So I wanted to see what that sound was like, go through the tones, and then we talk about it, and then we made an adjustment. So I listened to kind of the flaws in the kit, and I'm just trying to think about what I could do with those mics, what I could tell him to do with those mics as an experiment to try to get them a little more usable from a mix standpoint. Then once we landed on something we really liked, this is what we got. By the way, if you guys want to support the channel as well as get your hands dirty with some of this stuff, I'm going to be selling the raw tracks for this. I've had some people show interest in this, and if you want to purchase these and try your hand at the mix after seeing what I do to it, you can. I'll give you all the guitars, all the drums, everything completely raw. If this is something you guys tend to like, I'll do this a lot more, or maybe this eventually moves to Patreon, but for right now I'm going to sell them. I'll put a link in the description below if you guys are interested. Back to the video. All right, let's take a look in Pro Tools at what we've done. And again, the whole idea here was to take what he did at home with his kit, which is admittedly a really, really nice kit. He's just a good player, so that is going to play into this as well. All things aside, he's in a home in a relatively untreated room that's pretty small, at least as far as drums go, recording on decent but attainable drum mics for just about anybody out there. If you're looking for a set of drum mics, this isn't a new one. This isn't a crazy expensive one. This is an Audix set. It comes with the D6, some tom mics, some overhead mics, none of which are anything special. So even if you're going into it thinking this is unattainable based on what I have, take this with a grain of salt, because some of these things could be exchanged for a lot of different things. The D6 on the kick, not necessarily my favorite mic, but you can achieve similar results with other mics. I want to say it's an i5 on the snare. I could be wrong about that. You can achieve similar results with a 57 or even something kind of like a 57. This is not to say you need this stuff to get this result. This is recording at home with what you have. Can it work? And I think the answer we came up with was, oh, yes. Yes, it can. So let's take a look at what I'm doing. And I didn't want to replace anything. I didn't want to put samples in and call it done, because that would have been the easy thing to do. And I feel like that's what a lot of people do when they record at home. And you can kind of get this disjunct feeling of, well, now the sample sounds absolutely perfect, but any of the bleed in the overheads or whatever room mic you have set up, if you have a room mic, just doesn't jive up. And it sounds like this thing is in space somewhere and it doesn't match up with the rest of the kit. So let's just take a listen to what we've got. I'm going to pick a random spot here. Soloing the drums. That's a pretty cool drum sound for being done totally at home. And I'll show you what I'm doing. And the idea here is we're going to show what I would do to it. We're thinking of a couple other videos, and if you're interested in going down this rabbit hole with us, here's what I'm thinking. One video where I help John, basically surrounding his YouTube channel, how to get a really good sound out of his stuff, because he doesn't have a DAW like this, and he doesn't have all these third-party plugins. So how could we get something in the same realm of this with his tools, with basically stock plugins, with what he's doing? So let me know if you're interested in that. The other idea we have is to actually bring him into the studio with this song and look at the differences between what we did at home and what we can do in the studio. So let me know if you want to see that. Put thumbs up down there. Let me know in the comments if that's something you're interested in. But here we are looking at this stuff right now. Let's take a look at the drum bus and basically look at the top down. No surprise, Billy Decker. Somebody just sent me a license for a plugin that costs $10 more if you want to donate to what they're doing, but they're basically saying that I can get what I'm doing with Billy Decker with this plugin, and I'm interested to see. I'm going to try that out and I'll report back. But no surprise, Billy Decker doing its thing pretty aggressively, but I have the mix here turned down to 50%. I'm getting a lot of gain from this plugin right off the bat, so take that with a grain of salt. Here's what's happening. Because I knew I wanted kind of an aggressive thing, kind of an in-your-face thing, a little pumping thing, so I'm going way heavy-handed and then pulling it back. So if I put the mix to 100%, here's what we have. And pulling it back to 50%, now we're blending that dry in with the wet so we can get that kind of exaggerated, pumping, saturated sound right along with the clean stuff. So that's the idea there. Fresh air, this I love this plugin. It's easy to overuse, and I normally don't put the dials that high. With this, these drum mics just came across as dark, and that could be the room, it could be the heads, it could be mics that he's using, but fresh air just kind of helped things get up above the mix. Take a listen. Here's what it bypassed. When I hit that bypass button, it just kind of seems like I'm taking a blanket off of it. So here it is bypassed again. I'm going to unbypass it. Check this out. It just kind of has that more like immediate thing right in your face. It's not harsh. It can get harsh, but when you use this plugin sparingly, it just kind of adds a super nice sparkle. It could be the difference between like a super high fidelity microphone and a cheap microphone sometimes. EQ here, I'm just carving out space for the bass, and this was a point of contention for me because I'm having trouble with the D6 and the bass tone that I kind of dig, and both of those things hitting around 60 hertz, which I had to pick one. And then I'm trying Neutron. I've never used this plugin before, but it is kind of interesting to see the masking because I was, again, having issues with the D6 and the bass. So I'm kind of using this to show me what's happening a little bit. I mean, it was nothing, no big surprise here, like 100, which seems like a massive cut to me. It looks huge on this scale, but it doesn't sound like much, and it seems like it's helping, so I'm leaving it. But I could take it or leave it. Moving on to the individual pieces, let's hear the kick drum without anything going on here. So pretty quiet, and drum leveler at the end is going to help us. Let's just put that on first and see what's happening. Drum leveler by Sound Radix, super cool plugin if you just need like more consistent hits or if you have something that has a lot of bleed in it. This mic did have some bleed, and that again could be because of the small room, the miking technique that was used. In this mic, I can hear a lot of other stuff. And drum leveler is going to help us get it louder, more consistent, and less bleed. So still kind of gross, but in context, I think it's going to do what we want it to do to help us get that attack. Fresh air, because it just very little bit in the mid band, and it kind of added that little thing that I was missing with the D6. Let me exaggerate it and show you what's actually happening with this. So it's kind of bringing out that grunt in the mic, and I really dig that, but I think you can overuse it for sure. I'm not doing much with this EQ, cutting off frequencies we don't hear anyway. Pretty wide band around low 70s, and then ever so slightly at the top end. I'm not doing a whole lot. Just kind of trying to even out what that D6 is doing. The snare, there's two things here. You can see I have my snare phase mic normally, and you can do that where you're flipping the phase. If you're not familiar with that trick, I'll put the link to the video up here. Check that out. Instead of doing that phase trick, I'm using Oxford drum gate because it felt like it was more accurate to me. It was definitely a situation where there was a lot of bleed, and maybe I could have made it work, but this plugin is just giving me that much more control, allowing me to do more things with the snare drum, like more reverb, that I can create space because this is a smaller room. So that's my thought process going through this, and I don't want to get rid of everything. I am having the gain reduction about 20 dB, which is a lot. However, I'm bringing it back on the low end here with the decay. So and that's also letting me kind of level out the snare. I'm making it seem like he's hitting it a little harder in a smaller space. It's hard to let those drums breathe the way that they want to. Next stop is Spiff. There's a preset snare add body, and it does just that. I'm loving this plugin. I've only used it for about a month. Still not totally sure how to tweak it, but I love it. Pro Q, all I'm doing is a high pass filter, just kind of getting rid of the sub end of this thing, which really there's not any. It's just meant to be here as a safeguard. So lo-fi, just about on every snare drum, just that little 0.2% undistorted, and you can go more than that, but just adding this much just kind of saturates the snare and lets it be heard so much easier. Not something you'll really notice on studio monitors, but something like a phone or something like laptop speakers. This helps a lot. You can do the same thing with bass. And then fresh air again, because I felt it was dark. Fresh air to me, it's adding top end, but it feels like it adds like height to something. And that's what I'm getting with this. I'm not just getting a brighter snare drum, I'm getting a taller snare drum. Not necessarily the depth of the snare itself. I'm not going from like a 6-inch to an 8-inch. I'm saying like it feels like the space the drum was recorded in is now larger. That's what I get from fresh air a lot if you're using it subtly. You can definitely get that harsh bitey thing if you push this plugin. This is where I think it shines. Moving on to the toms, it's kind of the same thing. Oxford drum gate set to tom, which is awesome. Listen to the space there. Now, if I get rid of all of the Oxford drum gates here, there's a lot of bleed. It's not necessarily bad bleed, but again, because of the small room, I want to be able to do things to these toms that I don't want to have happen to the entire kit because there's so much bleed. So if I can get rid of that bleed, keep the low end, what I can do is add tom verb. And with Oxford Drumgate, you're keeping your low end, which is really, you can decide how much extension on that release you want with the low end. It's really cool. Overheads, basically I'm opting to use Soothe. You saw in my last video about Black Friday not really recommending plugins, but if there were some that I was going to recommend, it would be Soothe and Spiff. You're seeing me use them on just about every track so far. But Soothe is definitely doing a lot for these overheads in this kind of small, awkward room. Let's take a listen to with it on, and then I'll turn it off. It's just kind of grabbing those weird spiky things that happen for us. You can overuse this plugin like crazy and it's going to kind of mat the cymbals down. I'm definitely writing that line of too much, but I think what it makes up for, I would rather have that kind of matte than some of the weird thing that's happening with these mics. So past that, I'm kind of neutering that low end up to like 250. And that's just giving us the nice top end of those cymbals. The cool part of this was a room mic. I didn't expect him to give this to me. What this was, I later found out, was a vocal mic set up in the corner of the room he just happened to leave on. But I love it. I'm doing a lot to this, but let's turn everything off on this room mic and we'll see what's happening here. I think it was something like a 57 or a 58 just open in the corner, and it sounds ridiculous. It sounds so good. Thankfully, this kind of saved this whole small drum sound. So what I did, I ran Spiff. There's a preset called Bring in the Room. Kind of makes it pump a little more, which is really cool. Next, I use MJUC Room Drum Knocker. So here we go. So what I'm trying to do is create a pump, create some movement to kind of add some excitement to like a lifeless room here. Next we have Pro Q, which I'm cutting a lot of low end, kind of shelving that top end off slowly. Next, I'm adding a couple instances of Soothe, which are doing a couple different things. Vocal harshness, because it felt like there was some weird frequencies going on. And then a de-esser, which really isn't doing much, but it's just, my thought was grabbing extraneous, like shh, 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 when he hits the cymbals, because it is a small room, and I don't know exactly how close that mic is to the kit. So it's kind of giving the illusion that that mic is much farther from the kit than it really is. Next, I'm adding flatline. I thought it was really interesting. A room smash that's basically just clipping the sound of this thing for me. And it feels like a beaten, aggressive drum mic. So I'm going to solo all of the drums here, and then I'm going to mute this room mic. Check out what this does. That room mic just makes it believable that it's a drum set in a room. Past that, I have a couple things, snare, like revibe. You see me do that all the time. Verbiage, preset I ripped off straight from Nolly, which is really cool in some instances where you just need that kind of gross snare thing, non-linear verb where it's just really cool. So if we set out to figure out, can you record drums at home with mics that aren't terribly expensive, send them to a mixer, can you get good results? Yes. There's a whole lot more to that question though. There's the player. Is the player good? Is the kit in good working condition? Is the kit tuned? Are you playing it well? All those other things I didn't have to worry about because John is a good drummer. I could trust his taste in some of this stuff, and I just gave him an idea. Let him go with it, and he came back with really good tone, really good parts, really tasteful parts, and that is so much more to it than what mics he's using, because I can make just about anything work. Now, can we get better results in the studio? Let me know below if that's something that you want to find out. Until then, I will put a link in the description if you want to pick up the mics that he's using in this, if you're interested. Anyway, guys, I'm Resident Loser Jeremy. Hit subscribe if you like this kind of video. Let me know if you want to see more on this topic. I'll see you guys in the next one.